We left off in the third paragraph of the Shema. Lo susura achrei levavchem. You should not veer after your hearts. V'achrei nechem, after your eyes. Asher atem zonim achreim. That you choose to go astray after them seems to be the last statement. That seems to be totally superfluous. Levavchem, something in the heart that's belief. We spoke about heresy. To consider and value heretic positions. Einechem is the eyes, as we said, the eyes of the brook is the heart. The heart lusts, and the eyes seek out what the heart lusts. What does a person lust? The Gemara tells us there are two things which overtake a person, which is the most overwhelming, attractive thing to a person. Sexual drive and amassing material. Because material is power, and sexual is satisfying a certain need within the human being. That's eidechem, the eyes. We speak about envy. Envy starts with the eyes. You see, you want, you lust. And it connects the eyes with the heart. So in terms of veering after the eyes, there's no question. As we spoke about women gazing, looking at things which are inappropriate, reading pornographic material, that kind of thing, which brings to this. That means you're going after your eyes. The eyes are in a place which are inappropriate. Because those eyes will attaches you to certain things which are taboo. It's contrary to your spirituality. Let's say a person, as a result of his eyes, it develops greed within him, or a lifestyle he assumes because he's attracted to it. And that he becomes ingratiated, and then ingratiation brings him to other not good things. It's the eyes. The eyes, your eyes have taken control of your life. Remember many years ago, a certain person who I knew goes back a while back, and he says that he's taken on a hobby. He collects miniatures, these little miniature sterling silver, like icons, bicycle, cars, different things, small, these little sterling silver things. And he has like a whole set of them in his brake front. So this person was related to me. He says, how would you like, I should buy some for you. I said, I have no interest. He says, why? I said, because I have no interest. Period. I'm not interested. Not interested in collecting icons, sterling silver icons, period. I have no interest. He says, but it's so nice and so beautiful, so attractive. I said, no interest. So I said to the person, I said, today you're collecting icons, sterling silver, and soon you're going to start collecting precious stones. And one thing is going to lead to another, and you're going to become a collector. And what do you think happened? He did. Started with the icons. And what happens after a while, they say, until you buy the Ferrari, you're all excited. Once you buy the Ferrari, it becomes old hat. Now you're looking for a new thrill. The thrill is until you have it. Once you have it, now you're looking for the next thing. That's lo surach einechem. You go after your eyes and you let your eyes attract you to certain things. Once you have it, it's not as attractive as it was before. So now you're on to the next thing. And to the next things. And your life becomes consumed due to the eyes drawing you into many places where you don't belong. But the most serious location is where it has to do with sexual impropriety. Because you realize looking at a woman who's not your wife, that means the relationship is not a permitted relationship for you. That woman's really, to engage with her sexually is off limits. So the eyes which attach you to that woman has relevance to what that woman represents, because you're only looking at her because of the physical sexual attraction. We read in Pirkei Avos, Tar b'sicha and isha. Don't speak excessively with a woman. And this is even with your own wife. Kol shkem and eshes chavero. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, definitely with someone else's wife. You have two people, two friends, they meet, they have a conversation, catching up in old times. And you have a woman, and you can have the exact same conversation, but that conversation with a woman, the different feelings between the two parties, because they're opposite sexes. They're not the same gender. The same gender, it's just reviewing information, sharing information, reviewing information. A person says, I enjoy her company. When a man, you say, he's a great guy. It's great to be with you. It's not you enjoy the company. With a woman, you enjoy the company. What's the enjoyment aspect of it? It's what she represents. Because that woman represents something else. There's a law based on the Gemara discussed. It's called Kol Isha. A Jew is not permitted to hear a woman sing unless it's your wife, unless it's your daughter. Kol Bisha Erva. You want to go to an opera and you hear, let's say, just one woman singing. There's no question if you have a group of people singing where the voice is not distinct. It's one voice. You're not permitted to listen to it. Why? Because when you hear a woman singing, you're touched in a way which you're not touched when a man sings. It's because when she sings, she's expressing everything what she represents. And because of what the woman represents, and you're touched by that, it's something which it borders on actually crossing lines which are not permitted to cross. They have a Kol Bisha Erva. There's a whole discussion. What about if it's recorded music? A recorded voice. It's not in real time. Is it permitted? Question. Also, most told not. Because again, it's what the woman, the melody, the voice, the sound is an expression of her being. That's what the voice is. That's Kol Bisha Erva. So the law is, now let's say you're davening and there's a woman singing and you're within earshot of her singing. You're not permitted to daven. Because as you're davening, you're listening to something which is not in accordance with what you're doing. That's Achrei Nechem. What's Asher Tebzonim Achreim? Which you're going astray after them. The Gemara tells us that's idolatry. Idolatry, not heresy, idolatry. Now the question is, if it's idolatry, the word zonim. Zonim always means, nus means inappropriate sexual relations, sexual impropriety. So why is idolatry referred to as zonim, which is nus? Nus means promiscuity, licentiousness. So it's interesting. It's cited for Vilna Gaon that if you research all pagan religions, going back to the very beginning, every pagan religion has some kind of sexual act associated with that religion. Whether it's an orgy, whether it's something to do with the opposite sex, is involved in that, the Baal Pa'or, defecating. This was only a way to draw in people, but there was always a female part of that particular service. That's what it was. It's very interesting. An Orthodox synagogue, during services, separate men from women. Whether it's the women's gallery, whether there's a partition separating men from women, there's no joint prayer. Joint means sitting next, intermingled. Why? They have these male chauvinists. That's what it's all about. Rabbis at a Talmud. So I always explain it this way. A person is a neurosurgeon. The times where he operates 10, 12 hours on a person. with his team. To become a neurosurgeon, it takes about 16 years with all the training and everything. Person's a neurosurgeon. He's not allowed to drink coffee, even non-caffeinated coffee, because if he has any degree of tremor in his hand, he's not qualified to be the surgeon. He has to be in bed sleeping every night by 8 o'clock. He has to be physically fit, rest-wise, because the level of alertness he needs, it goes beyond what one normally considers rested and alert. Okay? And he's married. He has a wonderful wife. And his wife says to him, honey, when you're operating that 15, 16-hour operation on somebody's brain, I'd like to be in the operating room with you. Because you know I love you and you love me. And I'd like to be there with you. I won't even hold your hand, but I'd like to be there. I should be within your eye shot. So the husband says to the wife, I love you to the nth degree. When I'm operating on a man's brain or a person's brain, if I have any degree of distraction, the slightest, I have a person's life in my hands. I can't be distracted. That's the seriousness of the moment. You don't love me. It has nothing to do with me loving me. If you understand where I'm at and what I'm doing, you understand it's unrelated. Therefore, it's unacceptable under any circumstance. When you pray to God, you're having an audience. It's the closest thing as to the high priest going to the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. That's the level of focus you're supposed to have. A man and woman are naturally attracted to one another. Therefore, as a result of this, you cannot have any intermingling of genders during prayer service. Because prayer service is what? Is saying God's praises, blessing, acknowledging, and eventually having that audience. It all leads up to that. The level of focus, the level of cognizance, the level of attachment. It's the moment of the day that you're most attached. You can't afford any level of distraction. Even your wife should be there. Well, your wife will sit next to you. Not acceptable. So it's not because we're looking down on women. You know, if the men would be in the women's gallery, the women would be downstairs, would also be. Luckily, it's okay. The prohibition is intermingling of sexes. That's the prohibition. Asher atem zonim achreim. You go astray. Every idolatry. The idolatry was only to justify at a certain level that sexual interaction with the opposite sex. Laman tizkuru. So you should remember. What does it mean you should remember? Remembering means that due to the remembering and understanding the significance of whatever it may be, you're able to internalize that reality, and it causes actualization. Let's say a person himself is enthralled with a woman, and he can't get her out of his mind, out of his emotion. And he remembers certain things. As much as he remembers them, there's a certain infringement on that memory due to his mind and emotion being preoccupied with the opposite sex. So it's only if you go after your hearts, which is consider thoughts of heresy, heretical positions, you veer after your eyes or after idolatry, all these things impact on us negatively, and it causes this level of distraction and blockage that when you recall, the recalling doesn't touch you, which ultimately will bring to actualization. Will not do it. Why should you not go after your hearts, after your eyes, after your idolatry? Any of this. So you should remember and actualize all my mitzvos. Otherwise, person's rushing out of shul in the morning. They said, we gone. Don't you realize today's St. Patrick's Parade? I'm running to St. Patrick's. Well, don't you realize it's Halloween? I'm running to Greenwich Village. That means while you were davening, you had Greenwich Village, the parade in Greenwich Village. That was part of your mind. That was part of your emotion. What is the value of your prayer when you pray? Could have you prayed fully focused, internalized, and nothing existed except that audience? Not possible. There's no being who's more affected than a human being. And that's why environment for every one of us is so crucial and so important. And we're very much impacted and influenced by who we associate with, to what we're exposed, to what we read, to what we see. Every one of those are infringements on our reality. Regardless of what you were a moment ago, a person could shift literally in a nanosecond. One moment you're enthused, enthralled, attached. The next moment, like the previous moment, didn't exist. That is the nature of the human being. To that degree, that's how fickle we are. As we say, life is fickle. Our function is fickle. Our cognizance is fickle. Our focus is fickle. And only then will you be holy to your God. What brings holiness? Asher kitshanu b'mitzvosav. We become sanctified through the mitzvah. The mitzvah sanctifies us. To what degree are we sanctified? It's determined by the quality of that mitzvah. Person does a mitzvah by rote, without focus, without attention. You do a mitzvah with an ulterior motive, and you're focused, it will affect you. It will affect you positively. But the ultimate level of sanctification will not. Because a mitzvah that's not done for the sake of the mitzvah doesn't have the innate value to spiritualize you as a mitzvah that's done with ulterior motive, for acknowledgement, for financial gain, or whatever it may be. So only if you push this out of your life, what heretical thoughts, heresy, your eyes are pure, because you only look at things which conform with the Torah. You don't read, you don't look at pornography. You're not a woman gazer. You don't look at information which touches you, which is erotic. And you detach from idolatry, then you remember, you'll be able to internalize, and you will actualize. And then that mitzvah that you do, due to that level of cognizance and internalization, you'll be sanctified to your God. I once mentioned, if you ever notice, walking down the streets of Manhattan, you pass a church, the doors of the church are always open. Always. Walk down St. Patrick's, the doors are always open. All churches' doors are. Why are they open? Especially in the summer, it's hot. All of a sudden you feel the cold air of the air conditioning going into the street. So immediately you turn your head, you pass Saks Fifth Avenue, Barney's, that's what they do. Because they want to bring you in. It's like by the garage, they have a guy with a flag. He's flagging your car to come into the garage. The same idea. But what is it about? They leave the door open, they'll say, because everybody's welcome. Everybody's welcome to come and pray. It's much more than that. The moment you look, visual is crucial in terms of attaching to anything. Seeing is believing. Seeing is an attachment. When you see, you're affected. You're impacted. You never know how you're impacted. Therefore, whenever I pass a church, my whole life, I never, ever looked into a church. Ever. Because you never know, by seeing what's in there, how it could touch you. You never know. Do we know what we're affected by what we look at? We don't know. There's a law that when you pass by a church, you have to keep distance 4 cubits from the entrance of the church. That's the distance you have to keep. Because anything within 4 cubits, you're within the domain of what that represents. You have to stay out of its domain. Visual attaches you to that domain. Therefore, I walk by, I make sure not only am I out of the range of the church, but even in terms of visually speaking, I would not look in that direction under any circumstance. Because you do, when you, whatever you believe, whatever you are, becomes impeded, becomes semi-obstructed, and you know what that obstruction could bring about. So if you want to be kadoshim le'elokechem, that the mitzvah should fully sanctify you to your best ability, you have to weed all this other stuff out of your life. Not to the heresy, the gazing of women, or reading certain material, which has pornographic connotation. Today, everything's relative. At one time, when they had X-rated, today what's considered parental guidance at one time was XXX rated. That's where this world has come to. When was the last time you heard the word in English language called profanity? Profanity. Never. Maybe going back in Nixon era. Expletive. That was the last time. Today, walk down the street, the language people use, the vernacular. We're talking about they're spewing forth sewage, literally. That's what it is. People who look like law-abiding citizens, and they may be, but their language is atrocious. Profanities, every other word. And that's the way they speak. What does that say? That means society's become so desensitized to this area that this is natural. That's normal. But it's a problem. You go into an opium den, what do you become? And you don't smoke opium, but you inhale it, you inhale second smoke, third smoke. You inhale those fumes, you become an addict. You listen to this stuff long enough, ultimately it wears you down. It creates those blockages. Remember, many years ago, when I studied the tractate called Chulin, it has to do with the laws of slaughtering, ritual slaughter, how to slaughter an animal, and you do the internal examination, internal organs of an animal. So I went with my group of friends, we went down to a slaughterhouse where they did kosher slaughtering. And the shochet, the ritual slaughterer, he was a Talmud Chacham, and he learned in Europe, and he was the father of one of the people who was studying in our group. So therefore we had access to the kosher slaughterhouse. And we had to put on old clothing because you go in the slaughterhouse, the fumes of the animals and the waste there, once it permeates the clothing, you could clean it and wash it 1,000 times. You can't get it out. So we go there, and the level of the workers work in the slaughterhouse, we're talking about, strip off the hides of the animals. We're talking about, it's the lowest echelon of society. The language they used to speak about, he talks like a sailor, a drunken sailor. What they spoke, the sailor pales compared to them. Yeah. And we're in the slaughterhouse, and there's this rabbi, he's talking to us in Yiddish, and every other word is a profanity that comes out of his mouth. We were like shocked. What do you think he hears all day? He hears this group all day. He's slaughtering, and he hears them talking. What do you think comes out of their mouths continuously? He doesn't even know the difference. Every other adjective is a word, like shocked. So if you grew up in a society where you don't know any better, that's the way you talk. You won't want to be in the in and not on the out. So you go down that slippery slope. And you spew the same sewage as everybody else spews. And you discuss the same subject matter everybody else discusses. regardless of its level of unacceptability. But the Torah is telling us, you want to have a spiritual capacity to be able to internalize and to be touched and to fully appreciate, to actualize something and to be sanctified. You have to really clean up your act. You have to be in an environment which doesn't allow all this other type of things to infiltrate it. And then you're able to function in your full capacity.